Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. It is 4 o'clock, and this is a regular business meeting of the Jefferson Public Utility District. My name is Jeff Randall. I'm president of the board, and I'm calling this meeting to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. And if you are calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. So let's do a roll call. My name is Jeff Randall. I'm District 1 Commissioner and President of the Board.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner, District 2.
Dan Tupper, Commissioner for District 3.
The board is present fully. And the next item is our agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Anybody?
I'll make the motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor of approving the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye, the agenda is approved. All right, so we have our first public comment period, and I'll read this formal announcement and answer any questions if anybody's unclear. The public comment period allows members of the public to comment limited to 3 minutes each on any item not specifically listed on the agenda or for items listed on the consent agenda. Prior to any public comment, members of the public must first be recognized by the president and are not permitted to disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct and fair progress of the commission's meeting. After an initial warning by the president, individuals who intentionally violate these guidelines through actual disruption of the commission meeting will be dropped from the meeting. So if you're here to speak on something that's on the agenda, please wait till we get to that agenda item and then we provide public comment there also. So does anybody have any public comments for things not on the agenda or on consent agenda? Bill.
Thanks. Bill Stover, District 1. I'm going to read a letter on behalf of the homeowners that live in the Northport Townsend Trailcrest development of all electric homes. I'm adding some context to the comment I made at the last PUDBO meeting. There's a risk to the Northport Townsend power supply that could become an issue if we have repeated the exceptionally cold weather this winter. The Hastings substation transformer that supplies Trailcrest was operating at 120% capacity last January 15th, the Monday after we recovered completely from the 3-day outage that we had. Since then, and the temperature was still down in the below 20s. Since then, Trailcrest has added about 30 new all-electric homes and quite a few electric vehicles, hot tubs, etc. The second transformer installation at the Dana Roberts substation, expected early next year, will allow some of the loads on the Hastings substation to be shifted to the Dana Roberts substation. In the meantime, I'm requesting on behalf of our homeowners and myself that the PUD pay special attention to monitoring the Hastings substation transformer operating load and use its existing methods of communication to notify customers in the whole Northport Townsend area if voluntary load reductions are needed to help avoid transformer shutdown. If I see a request for voluntary load shutdowns, I'll make sure all 58 Trailcrest homeowners are aware of the request. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Do we have any other public comments for items not on the agenda or on consent agenda? Going once, going twice, seeing none, we will move on. So manager and staff reports. Kevin, are you going to lead it remotely or how are we going to handle that?
Yes, I'll lead it remotely. I did have a few glitches in my internet connection. I'm in Billings, Montana. You'd think I'd have good internet, but it's spotty sometimes. So I may have my picture off for a little bit. But first off, I'd like Mike to talk a little bit about the budget. Are you there, Mike?
Yeah.
And you're coming loud and clear, Kevin.
Thank you, Jeff.
Just a second to get it ready. So I'm just gonna kind of go over a quick update on how we use a dollar how is a dollar revenue used in 2024? So how are we spending the money that we're bringing in? This was just a question that had come up here recently, so just wanted to kind of show. This is through October 2024. This kind of is a graph just showing out of a dollar revenue, how our expenses are broken down. You can see that for the electric and broadband expenses, 35 cents of every dollar goes towards purchase power. Another 21 cents goes to labor and related expenses, and 19 cents goes to depreciation, with a little bit of everything else kind of sprinkled in there. So this is broken down by expenses. I have one here. It's also broken down by our income statements, line items. So this is just kind of showing, this is how we normally report the financials on the income statement. There again, cost of purchase power is still 35 cents. Depreciation still the 19%, and then the administrative and general expenses is 15 cents out of every dollar, with distribution expense maintenance, which is our outage responses, are 11 cents of every dollar goes to that, and everything else is kind of just sprinkled in. So this is just kind of a showing. And then this is projected through the end of the year. It's the actuals through October and the budget numbers for November and December. You can kind of still see we're staying right about 35 cents for the purchase power. Administrative general goes to 14 cents depreciation. So that right there, you can kind of see where our biggest expenses of every dollar go to. That's on the electric and broadband side. This is just another little breakdown. So you can see through based on expenses, it's actually taking us about 3 cents out of reserves for every dollar revenue. Because our total cost of service is $1.03 per that dollar revenue. So it's actually taking 3 cents out of revenues to make that dollar. To make up for the dollar, yeah. Based on the income statement lines, it's 2 cents. Part of it's rounding, is why there's a difference between the 3 cents and 2 cents. And then projected through the actuals through October and through the rest of the year, we should be putting about 3 cents of every dollar back into our reserves for the last couple of months here. Just because we are hopefully getting into the little bit colder season, revenues are going to bump up. Hopefully the expenses stay down a little bit. So then this is the same thing, looking at the water and sewer. Biggest cost here are labor and related expenses, depreciation. Take over half of about 50 cents of every dollar goes to those two items, with everything else kind of sprinkled in there. This is looking at our line item, our income statement lines, kind of showing that our depreciation and amortization, administrative and general expenses, distribution expense, operations and maintenance, which is the guys, our water crews out doing their work. Those are the biggest costs that we have by income statement. This is again looking at the projections, how we're going to do through the end of the year. Still the water crews and the administrative and general salaries, and just the depreciation, which the depreciation is what we should be putting back in as infrastructure improvements, capital purchases, is why that's in there. Same thing here, you can kind of see we're going through about 14 cents of every dollar is operating margins, goes into reserves right now based on that. If you look at the income statements, it's 15 cents per dollar goes back in there. Again, it's just a rounding thing between the two numbers on how they do it. And then through the end of the year, we should be put for the water and sewer about 15 cents per dollar back into reserves. So that just kind of giving an update. I normally do it at the budget time. I didn't do it at budget time this year. So yeah, that just a quick update on kind of how we're spending our dollars on our revenue currently through October, and then projecting out through the end of the year.
Okay. Couple of questions. I didn't want to stop you in the middle of your presentation. Some assumptions that we're making, on revenues moving forward. I know the commissioners see, and maybe it was in the amended financials, we get the revenues and expenses reports that you put out every month. And that was a little concerning to me, because we've been trending down on revenues and up on expenses, which is overall for the whole utility on both sides or all sides of utility. That number keeps getting bigger as the year has gone on. And I've looked at the forecast, and December looks to be a mild month by all norms. So I'm a little concerned with again, we also seen emails from the finance department, in this case from the general manager, about the level of our reserves being drawn down for a myriad of reasons. So I'm getting very, very concerned about our trajectories leading into next year and the assumptions that we're making. So, and I think this will tie in as we talk about other things like, the broadband rates, the cost of service, the capacity charge, a couple of those things are on the agenda tonight. So we might have some crossover. So I think it made sense to talk about this trajectory a little bit tonight when we look at the big scheme of things financially for the path we're on, because we don't have another meeting until early January. So, and if we do have some sort of event with low reserves, that concerns me about the decisions we make, in the next month and maybe 2 months. So just wanted that on the radar. Because one of the other things I wanted to ask you that I didn't want to stop you on, and that is on the cost of power. We were getting that reserve distribution clause money that has stopped now. So the cost of our power on paper now is going to go back up to its normal amount, and we won't be receiving that next year. That distribution won't come out like it has the past 2 years. And on the other side of it, the transmission side of things, which is about 1/10 of what our power is, that also is going to go up next year. And BPA is predicting rates to go up in the next rate case for the next 3 years. So again, my point is the trajectories of everything are going the wrong direction on all sides at the moment. And that has me somewhat concerned about the decisions that we are going to make moving forward. So, and I'd like to see us track this really close. And as we get into other things, I'll talk about broadband. I think with broadband, we're getting to a point where, as one commissioner, I would like to see either twice monthly or monthly report on things like how many people were signing up, what the revenue is, whether the revenue is coming from wholesale or retail, those types of things. So just throwing that out there. If we want to discuss it later on or now, we can do that.
Yeah, I think maybe holding the broadband stuff for the broadband item would be the most helpful. Okay. Ken, did you have any questions on Mike's report?
No,
Okay.
I do not.
Thanks, Mike. I guess the only question I have is, I know you kind of lumped some of the broadband and electric stuff together, and it's kind of a judgment call as to when we fully start tracking those separately, but I don't know if you want to share any thoughts on that.
So the reason I do, it's how we report stuff, because we report as an electric utility and as a water utility.
Okay.
But just as a reminder, that's why I said electric and broadband and water and sewer. The electric and broadband are lumped together during our reporting processes.
Okay. Is that
the financials? We made a decision to report them as one.
okay?
entity. And the same way with the water and sewer, we have chosen to lump them as one entity during the reporting process.
Okay. Are we going to be able, I mean, is that according to RUS guidelines, or are we going to be able to pull those apart eventually?
Pull the number. Yeah, we can pull them out. But we have them what we call divisions within our accounting system.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all, the only one's not really is the water and sewer. They haven't been separated out into 2 divisions.
Okay.
But the electric and broadband are 2 divisions.
Okay.
And I can run separate reports on both of them
Okay.
on how they're doing. So we can do report that way in the future.
Okay. And I think the nature of the construction and everything else going on broadband now, it would be kind of hard to make any judgments anyway, but just a question.
Kevin's got his hand up.
Hey, Kevin.
And this has a little bit on topic. Bonneville has sent out an email giving us the change in rates for the coming contract for 26, 27, 28. And they are a little bit higher than we were expecting. I'll throw them out there. I have not digested this. This just barely came in. So the tier 1 rate increase of 10.8% or an average of 9.8 each. Utility has a little bit different percentage. So we'll probably be on the lower side, the 9.8. The tier 2 power is at least 12.1. And this is the one that's a little bit surprising. The transmission rate increased to an increase of 24%. So
Wow.
we are going to see some BPA increases in the next contract.
And of course, when you're talking percentages, it's important to know what you're multiplying that by. And
Transmission's about 1/10 of
yeah,
power.
so these are like low single digit cent numbers that we're multiplying it by, but still those are numbers that we haven't heard from Bonneville probably who knows when they've ever had
Been a while.
like that. Yeah.
Well, and I've heard the transmission, again, it's a different percentage, so it's not comparable to equating it to power, but I've actually heard as high as 35 or 40% on the transmission side. So.
Yeah. And then it all matters too. Okay. How much does that work out in a terms of cents per kilowatt hour? That's where it really comes to bear. Okay. Shall we continue? What's the next item on the
Whatever.
staff?
Kevin.
What do you got, Kevin?
So I can't see the audience. Is Jose in there?
Jose is here.
Jose, you want to give us an update on Cross Connect?
Cross Connection, we are gearing up to send out notifications, surveys to every water customer we have. We're working on the mapping right now. We have everything, all the customer accounts. January, probably start training all the BATs, all the backflow assembly testers. To be familiar with the software that we'll be using for that. Expect the first quarter, probably divide all 5,200 customers into 4 quarters of the year, send them out that way. It's a little more manageable for us.
And for those of us who don't know what cross connection means, could you give a short description of
Flow assembly testers, the survey will go out asking them a series of questions. Whether they have an irrigation system, existing well on site, a booster pump, things like that. So in order for us to protect the water system, we're going to require backflow assemblies to each of those residents in accordance to state law.
Okay, and so is this a change in the Department of Health standards for?
We actually in 22 passed this,
Okay,
a revised version of it.
and depending on somebody's answer, might this cause them to have to install something that will cost them money, or how?
It's all on the customer to adhere to the regulations.
Okay, all right. So I guess more to follow on that. Okay, Kevin, back to you.
And one last item, I'm going to talk real quick about a transition team that is encompassed by the directors at the PUD. They will work as a team to put some stuff together for my transition out. It is Mike, Will, Jean, and Melanie. We will have some meeting, hopefully tomorrow afternoon at 2. If we can all get there, we'll start sharing some information with them as a team. On some of it, Joel will be there because of the confidentiality of the issues. And then Joel and Don are also part of the team as we move forward. This team will meet with individual commissioners. They will always be as a team when they meet with the individual commissioners and help make the transition easier as we move forward. So just letting everybody know how that's going to work. And some things will be started tomorrow. I hope we still have the directors meeting scheduled tomorrow at 2.
There's heads nodding.
Okay.
As long
With
as
that,
you're in. And
Kevin, we didn't get a chance to talk the other day. Can you quickly tell me if there's been progress on Lower Adelma Beach Road?
Jose, I'm going to have Jose give you an update. There is some ideas we're looking at. I don't know where he is on the process. Jose?
maybe also say, what is the issue again, for those of us who don't know?
The issue has been a little bit of dirty water complaints. Specifically, that tiny stretch of customers on that. And we're trying to figure out where exactly that line is dead ended.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the process of doing that. So as of now, just rough numbers, it's about 900 feet. Some of the ideas have been to replace that. It's a 2-inch line that's going through there to replace it with obviously PVC, to avoid any further issues with it. So we're looking into all our options there with it.
So ordinarily, wouldn't there be a blow off at the end of the line?
They have blown it off. It's just happening a lot with a lot more frequency.
Hmm.
So they'll go in, for example, today, blow it off, and by the end of next week, they'll have another.
So they think they've got some sort of crack or
It's
issue with
Probably the pipe itself. It's
Okay.
a whole 2-inch galvanized pipe.
okay.
So according to our map, it shows the old line following Adelma Beach Road. And it goes down about 3/4 of the way on Adelma Beach Road, and it shows active. But from my experience, I know that it is cut off somewhere. There is all the connections are off of Adelma Beach, not lower Adelma.
Mhm.
So one of the more recent complaints is the person at the very end of the line, which would make sense.
Right.
So we're trying to gather all the information we can.
So do you know when decisions will be made on that, or what additional information, or, kind of what?
We find out that
timeframe?
it is off where we suspect it is, where the dead end line is, then we'll probably start engineering for line replacement.
Okay.
So is this?
Thank you.
Is this turbidity, fumes, mineralization? What is it they're actually seeing with the water? Just out of
Part
curiosity.
of it, one of the customers sent in their water quality for independent person to test it, and it came back with higher than normal manganese and iron and turbidity, which is all somewhat related to quality of the water that they're getting, what we're producing. And I looked at every single well tied into the Quimper system. None of it is higher than standard, right? So we're meeting the EPA standard on it. It's just that little section.
Okay. Something with the supply line there.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's just old
Yeah.
line.
Okay.
And I do want to jump backwards here to the previous topic, and that was for staff. I know you're having a meeting tomorrow, so I don't want, I'm not trying to get too far ahead of the process. Scheduling is good. I know in January and February, I'm off the chart with trying to get stuff scheduled already. So the sooner you guys can let us know about what kind of, one-on-ones you want to do with the commission, the better. So.
All right. Kevin, you want to continue? You got anything else?
Nope, that's good.
That's it. Okay. Commissioner reports. Ken, would you be willing to go first?
Sure. On November 21st, I attended the ICG meeting. Met with the general manager on the 22nd. Attended the special board meeting on the 25th. And 3rd of the month, and another meeting with the general manager. On the 5th, I attended the EDC board meeting, and I can give you an abbreviated report. The meeting began with an introduction of a new board member, Ben Frazier, who is the top HR person at the mill. The executive director, Cindy Brooks, talked about there not being any update on the recompete grant, when that will come through. There was approval of a Department of Commerce grant for them to hire a grant writer. And that person will be applied to putting together a proposal for the Timber Collective project, which will be on some of the airport land, and it'll focus on how to recycle and generate some additional income from various wood products. Also, there are other grants in the pipeline. There was discussion of model of understanding how communities thrive. that was provided by a group called WealthWorks. They're a consulting group. Interesting discussion as to why there's no longer a Chamber of Commerce in Port Townsend. And that had to do with the lack of funding and basically management issues. But that's something that is for a community the size of Port Townsend, unusual not to have a Chamber of Commerce. The EDC had a total turnover of staff between June and August. And there was some discussion of the responsibilities of the 3 employees as well as the executive director. Decision was made to adopt what's called an action agenda, which in some ways is focused similar to our agenda, indicating what sort of action needs to be taken and then trying to allow time for focused discussion on various topics. So they're in the process of interviewing potential new board members. Their budget was approved. However, it's running at a deficit because they had counted on the recompete grant coming through sooner rather than later. So they don't have that money yet, and they're running at a deficit, and they're drawing on their reserves. Questions?
That was the 1.2 million. I think that grant that they were gonna
Yeah,
get.
yeah.
1.2. So it was a fairly substantial amount of money they were.
Yes, indeed.
in.
Yes. I hope to make it to the party on Friday. I've got a minor medical procedure, so if I'm not there, that's why. Looking forward to meeting the general manager on the 27th. Participating, I skipped ahead, participating in the interview of search firms for a new general manager on the 16th and 17th, meeting with the general manager on the 20th, then again on the 27th, and also on January 3rd, and that's my report.
Okay. Dan.
All right, so I attended the NOAANET strategic workshop on November 20th via Zoom, along with General Manager Street. NOAANET staff presented some options for NOAANET to expand its business model towards retail broadband, some cellular business opportunities, and they gave some background on the trajectory of the current revenue streams and the challenges for those business lines moving forward. No decisions were made, and NOAANET staff will bring forth more detail on those items and opportunities that they presented at a later date. There was a brief discussion about the process for potential new owners that might want to come on with NOAANET, and that too will be discussed in a future meeting. Later that day, and actually on another note, well, maybe I have it here. Let's see. Yeah, I did have it here. So later that day, I also spoke with CEO Craig Nelson at NOAANET about he and General Manager Street setting up, arranging a meeting to bring you up to speed with what happened. Have you heard anything yet from either of those? Okay, and I know.
Also, there might be an email that I missed, but no.
No, I didn't think there would, 'cause I think probably Kevin and I were probably still gonna talk about it when he got back as well. So, but to get you up to speed with what really, the full detail of that meeting, because they only had the member reps and the board members, so. And I guess on one more note on that for staff, Kevin, have we put forward to NOAANET that Commissioner Randall will be taking over the board seat, and to Energy Northwest that I will be coming on as the Energy Northwest board member? Have we done that yet? Anybody?
Oh, here he comes.
Yeah, I have talked to Craig Nelson about the changes, Jeff. Craig and I are gonna set up another meeting. We're gonna bring you, maybe even this week, some information. I have not reached out to Energy Northwest about the change, but it's a simple email, but I will get that done this week, with the exception of Craig. I haven't heard back from him, Jeff, on setting up a meeting.
Okay.
Craig Nelson.
Get you up to speed with that process.
Okay.
It's probably in the works. I attended the Intergovernmental Collaborative Group meeting on November 21st. I met with General Manager Street on November 22nd. I participated in our special board meeting on November 25th. Let's see. I attended the Jefferson Fire Chiefs Zoom meeting on December 2nd. Wasn't much relating to us other than, let's see, Fire Chief Manley from the Brennan Department passed on his thanks to our field personnel for the great communication and coordination that they had during the outages that took place down there in the Quilcene Brennan area. So kudos to staff. I don't know who all that was, but I'll let that get passed on to whoever's listening to this now, to those involved with that. I attended the Port Ludlow Village Council meeting on December 5th. And in the past week, I've received a dozen or 15 emails that I responded to all of, and a few phone calls from the residents of Marrowstone Island. We'll get to that later. I will attend the NOAANET meeting via Zoom on December 11th. I will attend the Energy Northwest Zoom meeting on December 12th. And I believe the 13th, right? Is that the 12th or
It's
13th?
the,
I sent a message to Susan to send me the Zoom link. and
yeah,
stuff,
it's
so.
Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah, so anyhow, I'll attend
So
the
it's
two.
the 11th and 12th.
I'll attend the two Energy Northwest meetings.
Yeah.
I will meet with General Manager Street on December 13th. And I'll attend the PUD holiday gathering later that day. I will attend the VOC special meeting on December 16th and 17th. Jefferson County Rotary has invited me to speak at their meeting on December 19th. I will actually take my oath of office for my second term as PUD Commissioner for District 3 on December 23rd. And I will meet with General Manager Street on December 27th and on January 3rd. That completes my report.
Thanks, Dan. And before I forget, you brought up Energy Northwest, and I should have asked Kevin earlier, but Kevin, I sent you an email, and I don't know if you responded or not, but the question of talking to Energy Northwest about the assistance they can provide us in going after federal grant money for some of the capital facility projects we have on the electric side. Have you had a chance to reach out to Sarah Giomi there to see if they could be on our agenda sometime to maybe share what they can do?
I have not reached out to her. We're looking at doing some things in a little different way, starting in 2024, 2025, I should say. And once we have a little bit of better go, Jeff, I'm estimating maybe in the second meeting in January, first meeting in February, we would try to get him to come out. And Sarah's a great speaker, so we'd see if she could come in on like one of those dates.
Okay. And again, what that is Energy Northwest staff has been super successful at getting grants for other agencies, and they just seem to like understand the players and the rules and the grants, and they can at least just come and talk to us about what they could do. That was the idea.
Good.
So heads are nodding here.
Mhm.
Okay. So my report on the 20th met with Don McDaniel. On the 21st, we had our ICG meeting and spoke to Joel Paisner. On the 22nd, had a lovely lunch meeting with Mike Bailey. Thank you, Mike, for your time. Enjoyed that. On the 25th, we had our special broadband meeting. On the 26th, had meetings with Leo Boyd, Don McDaniel, and Kevin Street. On the 4th, got a call from one of the customers on Marrowstone about broadband. On the 5th, had meetings with Will O'Donnell and Kevin Street. And then the North Olympic Development Council met on that same day on the 5th. And it was kind of an end of the year meeting. But a couple of things stood out to me. They announced that the Puget Sound Partnership is giving a grant of $83,000 to the Jefferson County Health Department for helping with doing studies of failing on-site septic systems that might be affecting Hood Canal. So that'll help our county. But also, it really became clear, Karen Affeld with the North Olympic Development Council was talking about working with the Clallam BAT, Broadband Advisory Team, and how they're hoping to get BEAD applications for all 14 BEAD areas in Clallam County, but Clallam PUD isn't going to be doing them. It's going to be the private internet service providers. And
They happen to know with Clallam involved, is NOAANET working with Clallam or with the county?
they didn't mention NOAANET, but they did mention, Wave and the other big ones. And, and it's like their broadband action team was like doing everything possible to try and find out, are they going to submit something? And they successfully got contact with their staff at these broadband companies. But in the end, they're like, we don't know how or if any that they're actually going to do. And the interesting thing for me was the completely opposite models that we're pursuing. And we're pursuing a PUD out front model here where we're trying to go for everything and then coordinate, service with our ISPs. And their Clallam PUD is just basically seems to be kind of hands off and leaving it to the
That's why I
private.
asked if they might be deferring to NOAANET, they being Clallam.
They didn't, NOAANET was not mentioned, but it's a good question. So anyway, it'll be interesting going forward to see, as things progress, because we're very different business models. On the 6th, had meetings with Leo Boyd and Will O'Donnell. On the 10th, today, before this meeting, had a phone call with Angela Bennick of Kitsap PUD, Leo Boyd and Joel Paisner. I'll be on the Energy Northwest meeting tomorrow, so I won't be able to listen in on NOAANET. So I'm glad that you're going to be there. And on the 12th, and then I'll be at the holiday party. I'll be at the search firm meetings that we have on the 16th and 17th, and that's the end of my report.
So it's a little bit off the topic, sort of. Maybe we could, if Will could weigh in a little bit, you might know enough about BEAD. If they're unsuccessful in Clallam, is there a second round how does that work with the BEAD?
Or if nobody submits
If
anything.
nobody submits, what does that mean then? I mean, or if there's open areas of the BEAD still left open after, will there? I mean, I just don't know much enough about BEAD.
So if there's nobody submits in the first round, there'll be a second round. And the state might reach out to agencies to apply for those areas. That's a possibility. To my knowledge, I could be wrong. I don't believe NOAANET is pursuing anything there. I believe it is mostly Wave and maybe CenturyLink.
Yeah, those are the names that kind of came up. Okay, so on to the next item. Give me just a moment here. Get the agenda back up here. So I think we're on to consent agenda. Did we have any changes to consent agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Consent agenda is approved. Okay, old business, capacity charges. And I know we have a clean resolution in front of us. I read through it. It seemed to incorporate all the changes we made last time, but I'll turn it over to whoever is going to formally present that.
I will formally present this. I believe this is a good start. I believe along with our rate study moving forward, that's how we're gonna be able to do the capital projects that we need to do in Jefferson County. So I can go through this again if we need to. It's up to the commissioners, but
Maybe
I think we've talked about it enough.
Yeah, maybe hit the highlights for the people who are here and the implementation date and what the PUD is going to do to get the word out, because that was one of the questions I had of Jameson. And he said there's some draft press release story stuff going around staff right now. But maybe you could hit that too. What are we doing to let folks know of these changes?
So a part of it will be we belong to the Builders Association. We attend their meetings, a lot of outreach through that group. There'll be some other outreach with individual people that do a lot of business with the PUD. So we do have quite a bit of information to get out. I don't think it's going to catch anyone by surprise, but I do think we have a pretty good idea of how to get it to the contractors. And that's who's going to be the most concerned people, or the ones that are going to have to pay the pricing here. So what we're proposing is a rate. I'm just getting down to it. My computer's $2,150 for a 200 amp panel, which equates to $44.80 per kVA. And that is for what, home being built today, it would add $2,150. Businesses would, increase, quite a bit for a three-phase 400 amp service. We are putting in that we want a 10% increase for the next 3 years, so that it would just automatically come in. We would bring it back to the board. The board would say yes, but it would be approved for the 3 years. We wouldn't have to have it brought back as a new item. There is some protection in joint government projects. If we can get in-kind contribution, for example, a lot of times when we work with the port, they may dig the trench or they may do some additional work that would be in kind that we could work with the costs of the capacity fees there. And there is a 501c3 for that will be 20% of the 2,150 or 4,480 cost to low income housing. But it does have to be, it's very specific. It has to be a 501c3.
Right. Housing.
Joel? Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
Yep.
I was just going to say, basically, it's not based on the income of the homeowner. It was based on the land being controlled by an entity, and it was dedicated for low-income housing.
And
Correct.
and that's per state law. That state law allows us to do it in that fashion. Yes.
Right. So, and I guess the big thing is the consultant said we could have a rate of $112 per kilovolt kVA, and we came up with a number that was 40% of that as our starting point. And then for the low income, it would be 20% of that, even less. So around $400 for a 200 amp panel. So, and would go into effect on February 3rd. And again, you're hoping to get this stuff. When are we going to get something to the paper, I guess, is my question.
I'm going out on a limb and saying Jameson will reach out to the paper. If we approve it tonight, he will reach out tomorrow.
Okay. And Will's head is nodding. So we got affirmative there. Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions at this point?
Yeah, so just one little bit of process moving forward is this once we get this passed and then we start moving forward. Kevin, next year obviously is a transition year for the PUD in many, facets. Who will be designated or charged with following how this plays out in the sense of, the amount of permits we do and the amount of money we discount? And when it comes up again in 1 year, who will be the person that will be reporting on that? So that, this is set up for us to look at it every year. The 10% adder is where I'm looking at this. So, we could just let it roll, but I think no matter how it plays out, we should get some sort of a report on the success or the failure of this policy. So who will that team or that person be next year at this time, to the best of your knowledge? Because obviously the way things are going, you won't be here for the whole year. So how do you see that playing out next year so that there isn't a loss of continuity on this particular policy?
I guess I would just
So-
would that just be something that we would get at budget time, as kind of, if we're interested in that numeric, what are the capacity fees collected? What categories were they in, and how did it work out, for each one, including low income? Does that fit with what you're asking, Dan?
Well, not really. I'm just
Okay.
kind of looking at, for organizationally wise, who will this fall upon? And they need to know that during the course of next
Okay.
year. It won't just be the general manager is my
Right.
assumption.
Okay.
Just
And-
making, have somebody in place to follow and go with this. So there's no surprises in 1 year when the anniversary comes up and the 10% adder
Right.
comes up. We need to know whether that's something that we want to change or not change.
Okay.
So
And
part of this, go ahead, Dan, sorry.
Oh, and then my thing was just so that we have the data to make that decision a year from now on the anniversary date.
The date is easy. It's tracked in NISC. Jimmy and his team, they're responsible to, assess this when we get new customers in. So he will be part of the team. At this point, I'm gonna say it will be the new manager's job to make sure it gets done. But it will be a collaboration between Jimmy, his team, and the directors.
Thank you.
Okay. And again, for those,
I will.
go ahead, Kent.
Oh, I have one just quick statement. We are looking at doing the same thing with water. There was a question on the LUD systems that we're still working through, but we do plan to bring a water very similar to this to the board also.
And just for folks who haven't been tuned into this issue, we have quite a significant capital facilities need on both the water and the electric side. And we have limited ways on how we raise money to pay for those things. And capacity charges or system development charges, as are sometimes called, for city water and sewer systems, and sometimes streets, sometimes other things, have been something that's been out there for a long time. The PUD's never collected them. And it's a way for us to recognize that people and homes and businesses that have been here for a long time have been paying into the system, helping us have what we have. And new loads coming online create an impact. And this helps us address that impact with a little less pressure on rates. So that's
And an impact fee is how this is referred to in a lot of other
Correct.
municipalities and other entities.
Another term.
Have
Correct. Okay. So do we have any public comments or questions on the resolution that would implement capacity charges at Jefferson PUD? Got a hand up? If that's Roger,
That's Roger.
246, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I get it that it's a benefit to the whole group to have better infrastructure on our distribution system. And I get it that it's real easy to charge the other guy for it. But I think in our mad race to set the plate for the next rate increase all the time, I think we miss the bigger picture sometimes. And I don't like the assumption that our distribution system, which is the backbone of our organization, both electrically and politically, I mean, we have a whole polity arranged around that. The backbone of that system is our distribution system, which is shared. As we've said before, we don't charge by the mile. It's a commons, and it's not my idea that a commons is something that's divisible or up for sale. And I think that the long-term effects of making a decision like that for governance, for instance, the more you tip the playing field, the more guardrails you're going to need. I see you're already making cutouts for government agencies, which is going to put a much huger burden on residents and commercial accounts. And it's going to affect your policy too, because it opens the door for further segmenting of the distribution system. For instance, as I've said before, charging by the mile. And I think there's legal implications too, because you're inviting class actions by customers by creating what could become a private membership. I think that the real equity is in a level playing field and having common access to a shared system. My two complaints against passing this are, first of all, loss of commons, and secondly, at a time when people are trying to afford houses, adding $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 to a cost of a house is not how we want to be making our money. And thank you. That's the end of my comments.
Thank you, Roger. Do we have any other comments or questions on this resolution?
So I'll make the motion for the Board of Commissioners of Public Utility District Number 1 of Jefferson County, Washington, establishing capacity fees and charges for electric services provided by the PUD.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Not that this,
Woo, thank you.
but this stuff is expensive and yeah, and it's something that communities with older infrastructure have been dealing with for a long time. So on we go. So please will expedite the getting the word out there and answering questions and so forth. Okay, let me get back to the agenda here. I think we're on to the fun item of the night.
There's a fun item.
Didn't you know that? Broadband rate changes for 2025. And again, meant to be for discussion only, but Will or Kevin, please start the discussion.
Well, you can start. I do have some comments I'll make either during Will's talk or after Will gets done.
1 second, let me share my screen. Okay, we have a raised hand for Roger Risley. I don't know.
I think Roger, you probably
I had taken it down before he put it back up.
okay. Roger, did you need something or was that a mistaken hand up?
We're going to assume mistaken.
Okay, we're moving on to broadband.
Okay, so staff has put together a series of rate revisions for our broadband products. We brought this to the board, a draft of this at the last meeting. We're going to bring this, we're looking for passage in early February. We're doing this in stages. These rate discussions have taken multiple meetings every time that we've done them. So we've brought the rates back one time. We'll bring them back this week. We expect to bring the policies that go along with the rates in the first January meeting, and then the whole package in the second January meeting for hopeful approval in some form or another February 1st, and putting the rates into effect at that time. And we can discuss some of those things. The rates that we've received a lot of public comment on are our transport rates. That'll be the second part of the presentation. So we'll start with our PON rates. Let me go. Sorry, I got to decide which buttons to push here. Okay, so why revise rates again? We last updated in November of 2023. We've since that time built out a bunch of our PON network and added a bunch of new connections. We've been able to test the rates and test the products. Some of the products staff believes could use some adjustment. We are looking at the BEAD application, and the BEAD had some prescriptive pricing targets that we spent some time reviewing internally and looking at adjustments to make. And we are looking at making an adjustment to our low income rate. And that is due to the BEAD targets and also due to the loss of the ACP program.
What did the ACP stand for?
Affordable Connectivity Program.
Okay.
It's through the FCC, and it allowed for a $30 rebate to the utility, but a supplement to low-income internet users so that they could lower their price. So it brought, the point of entry for a low-income user to $15 a month.
But that was temporary.
Network. Unfortunately, Congress did not renew the ACP funding in April of 2024. So we are still signed up. We're keeping in good standing with the FCC in case it ever comes back, but there's no indication that it's coming back anytime soon.
Okay.
So as we lower the low income threshold that they can buy the product for, where do we make up for that that difference? Is it in the other rates, or is it less of a margin, or how does that get made up? Because we're lowering the low income and there's no subsidization from the federal government or anywhere else. Because I don't know what level, will we have 20% low income customers, 50% low, it could be a significant amount of money.
Yeah, we haven't identified the source for where that comes from, but we can run a report on that at the next meeting based on, because any low-income electric customer is automatically eligible for that rate. So we can do a report next time. I don't have those numbers today. And the last item that's been talked about quite a lot is our transport rates. We've had many iterations of transport rates over the years. We'll go through some of them. I have some new slides to share that weren't in the packet. And we'll talk about why staff feels we need to redesign on those rates. Okay, pond service. The pond service is our residential and small business service. This is the majority of customers that we hope to connect in the network. We're planning on building out, we're planning on building out to between 4,000 and 5,000 customers in the next 4 to 5 years. We have more than 4,200 folks already signed up for fiber. We're over our take rates in all but one of our construction project areas. So we're seeing a big growth. Almost all of that is the PON connections. PON means passive optical network. That means one fiber can be split up into many connections. We do a 1/32 split. It can technically be done up to 64. It is a shared service rather than a dedicated service. So bandwidth is shared between the users on the port. But generally, it's very close to the advertised rates that we're putting out there. Delivered over our Calix system. This is the equipment we purchased with our grants in the network, both in our communications facilities and the equipment we're putting in the home. Okay.
So this is more of the retail side of things, correct?
Retail and wholesale. This is the small business and residential connections that we're doing. Okay. So the retail PON internet, you can see the rates in 2024. Most of these prices have been well received by the customers. We haven't had a great need to change them. We've added some small tweaks. The tweaks are in red down below. The biggest change, we lowered the price we're proposing to lower the price for the 3 gig to make it a little bit more accessible. That way we'll get a higher uptake. So we don't see it as a discount. We see it as more revenue because we make it more attractive for customers to purchase, take advantage of the extra bandwidth on our network. We're building a brand new network where we have 10 gig capacity across the network. Every home is capable of getting symmetrical 10 gig in the home. We're not currently selling that in the home. We want to make sure we can customize the experience, but we are going to offer that to businesses. We'll see that in that bottom line. The residential low income program eligible rate is that second line. You see before it was $45 was the previous charge. We're proposing going down to $35 for 150 and then $50 for 1 gig service or 1,000 megabits per second. Staff's feeling on that. BEAD is awarding more points for low income rates below $30. They're also are setting a target of $70 for a gig and wholesale of $50 for a gig. We offer a little bit different because unlike a lot of providers, we're providing a managed service for all our users. So we're installing all of the equipment for them and we're providing more remote support for our users. We have a lot of we're building between rural Quilcene and Discovery Bay up into Gardner. We're eventually going up, through the Cape George area, all in the forested areas, down through the Coil. We want to make sure that we can bridge the digital equity gap and provide a service that our customers can use and we can help take care of them. We found that the best way to do that was with that managed service. So that's a little extra cost for us. So we are not going to meet the BEAD targets, but we believe we can be close. The $35 rate, as you said, Dan, that is not a rate that we will make, cover our cost of service for, so that it will be subsidized by the other ratepayers. We can run more of an analysis, but at this point, we're just trying to meet those targets, and we're also trying to increase the accessibility of the internet for, we're building out to a lot of places. The idea is to get connections. We want to make sure people can use them. We went from the ACP support where folks could have $15 a month internet. Now it's up to 35. We're trying to do something in the middle and offer more.
So I guess this is where I'll circle back to the comment I made during customer or commissioner reports. I think we're getting close enough to the completion of the first grant area, and we're going to contemplate the second grant area. And, and we're talking about BEAD, which is a smaller percentage of the overall build out, and how those costs could be different. We're reducing these costs overall to kind of accommodate that a little bit. So again, it concerns me of the metrics that we're using to determine these rates moving forward, which brings me to, I'd like to see some sort of a tracking start at the beginning of the year about how many customers we have, how many we're projecting month by month or bi-monthly or however, so that we can start to track how true these rates may meet up with expectations for revenue and expense. I think we're to a point where that data needs to start being coalesced, where the board can see it, because I'll have to tell you, I don't understand this business line very well, if at all.
Understood.
So
Yeah.
for me, it's about show me what we're spending, what we're taking in, what the projection is, so that we can see if we're on track or not on track, so that we can set policy or set rates accordingly. That way the public can see that too, to understand what's going into our decision-making process for lower rates or for higher rates.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and at this point, the rates aren't so much, the rate adjustments that we're making here are more about trying to develop products that the customers will take, more so than covering cost of service directly. These are the rates that were the base rate that we determined in our two feasibility studies was that we need to get at least $65 a month to cover our cost of service.
and this may even be a heavier lift or a bigger ask. I would also like to see us somewhat start to predict schedule for what build out is left and what build out is to come. So again, it's benchmarking milestones, metrics, so we can see the trajectory of where we're at, and if things come up, we understand why we're not on that trajectory. So again, forward public facing, so they can see what we are doing and why we're making the decisions we make.
Yeah, we can bring back all of those reports in the future. I don't know how much time Kevin wants to have me spend in
Yeah,
front of-
that's
I think some of this is footnotes for later.
yeah, but
And we can give reports that just can be included in the board.
But I
packet.
just want it on the table that this is something I think we need to do, and I would hope that everybody would kind of be looking at the reasoning behind that, so.
So the other rate that we created is we didn't have a breakout for business itself. I will say that staff or possibly myself got a little bit too carried away with trying to simplify things and build things into kind of a component pricing. In our previous rates that we passed in 2021 that Doug advised on, and the rates are very similar. We had a residential rate and we had a business rate. And as we built out the businesses, we found the business rate is a wise decision because there's more support. We do more support during the day. We do support after hours if the business is open, and they get a higher level of service because they have a greater need. So we're proposing a separate business rate as well. Because those rates go into effect, that also affects the wholesale connections, because the wholesalers are reselling these products to customers over our network. And so we've set up the wholesale pricing to match proportionately to what we have on the business side and with the LIPE.
Okay,
I have a question.
question on this part?
Yep.
Okay, please keep it to a question,
Yeah.
not a comment,
Right, well,
because we'll do public comments later. So if you have do you have a clarifying question that helps you understand what's being,
well, I'm wondering how he came up with those numbers because the margins are so close.
any additional?
Well, I mean,
I guess I'm gonna probably ask you to hold your comments till we're at comment time.
okay.
Yeah, we don't have as great a margin for the low income program rate because we're already losing money on that one. That's up to the commission if we'd like to adjust those. So it's a narrower margin. The other margins we tried to keep consistent across the board.
I'm guessing Leo's talking about, for example, the wholesale business, 1 gig 67 compared to what we're charging for business of 95, or I don't know if you're talking about that or something else.
Well, right, because you guys don't do support for our customers. We handle the support. So we're the first line of support. They call us.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a bigger margin between the business, bigger margin for business customers than for residential for that reason.
Okay.
Okay, we showed this slide last time. Staff was asked to put the JPUD in perspective on how we rate. So we put how we compare versus for the 1 gigabit rates service, and we're low middle. So we don't charge the least, we don't charge the most, just above the middle of the pack. And these are all municipal providers, or almost all municipal providers, or spin-offs of co-ops.
Okay.
Again, this is just recapping what we explained. Streamline products and descriptions, few changes to current popular products, reduced price for the 3 gigabit. I don't think there's anything else here. We are, for the business, we're requiring residential customers who take retail internet from the PUD to use our equipment. If they don't want to use the equipment, we ask them to use one of our qualified internet service providers. For businesses, it's optional. We're still providing, we're going to charge them the same either way. We have found that it costs us the same we have had a number of businesses that have IT support companies, and we've been having to do a lot of work to support those IT companies. So if we have minimal equipment included in the base price for that. If they use it, great. If they don't want to, we're going to charge the same either way.
Okay.
Network transport. What is network transport? It allows for the secure transfer of data across JPUD's network. It's dedicated instead of shared bandwidth. It's for enterprise customers, large businesses, government, schools, banks, cell towers, and we sell it to the ISPs as well. Okay. Why the big change in this product? Staff does not believe that we designed the transport model correctly last time. The prices are well below market rates. Today, we only have one customer that is using the product for a couple of connections. We anticipate up to 20 more connections in 2025. We need to have fair rates across the board, and we believe dedicated products should be priced higher and shared.
So could you elaborate on that a little bit about the transport? I mean, do we pay somebody further upstream for our access? I mean, how does this exactly work?
It gets real confusing, but we can start.
As to what we want to base our cost on to pass on to an ISP.
So here's the basic way that the transport works. You can do it a couple different ways. What we're talking about is transport across our network. So you go from one place on the network.
You're talking just about Jefferson County PUD.
For what we're basing this discussion on, there's other, let's stay there first, and we can talk about the other later on, because it'll just confuse things. Talk about it to start with. To get from one place in Jefferson County PUD across our core network to another place, currently we have component pricing, and you pay $150 for an endpoint. You pay $200 for a core, and if you get to the other endpoint, it's another $150. And it's a total cost to go across the network from one point to another, $500. And that's a flat rate up to 10,000 megabits per second.
And that's per month.
That's per month. These are the monthly
Is
charges.
the endpoint just one connected point, or can it be multiple points at an endpoint?
From our perspective with this is just, we're only handing off to one point.
Okay.
What the user does with it is up to the user.
Yeah.
We don't govern that.
And I think that's the issue that we're hearing. It's like we're providing it to one point, and then the ISP is then continuing on and serving multiple customers. Maybe 50 customers, or who knows how many.
Or it could be a bank that just needs to get from one branch to another.
Okay.
Or it could be a government agency.
So you said in the previous slide that you anticipate about 20 transport customers.
Correct. So part of,
Sure.
yeah, and part of this was instigated by our agreements with NoAnet. NoAnet, when we set the rates last time in 2023, we had, at that time, we had almost 50 connections over what we called our legacy network. That was the network that NoAnet operated for many years. And during the transition, we ended our agreement with them to operate, but we couldn't quite come up with a mutual agreeable solution for how to manage those leftover customers. In 2023, we essentially agreed to table it for 1 year, where we would just continue charging what we're charging until the end of that year. And at that time, the understanding is that those customers would either have to move to different networks or have to move to JPUD's new network. And some of those customers would come on, JPUD would then manage. It was offered to NoAnet to become a qualified ISP. At that time, they were not interested. It may be different. There's been some questions, what are we going to do with NoAnet going forward? Kevin, Joel, and I met last week to discuss the transition. We're drafting a interlocal agreement to make sure that we can have some mutual operability if they want to use our network. There's ways to do that. We still would like to have a lot of those customers come onto our network. I think they would prefer to keep their cell tower customers under their management. So we're fine to discuss that.
And this group would include anchor institutions, fire, school, law enforcement, or is this all ISPs that we're talking about?
It includes a mix of all those things you said.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so this
So those customers are not being charged by either of these rates. They're being charged an entirely different rate scheme, some of which date back to 2014, some of which are from different periods of rates. Some of them are custom quotes. They're all over the place. So my job, I believed, is to help the commission come to fair and consistent and transparent rates. Right now, as of 2025, we're not going to have them. So we're trying to find a new model that accommodates pricing somewhere in between what we have been charging and what is for one customer and then for the other customers. And we're also trying to get back to an industry standard. So as I said with the PON rates, we try staff, how do I put it? We're doing something different. We have the opportunity to do something different. We're the only PUDs to date to pursue the retail network. We're doing that to meet customer demand. Our desire was to make things simple and transparent and easy to use. I think we went a little too far last time. We tried to make component pricings with fewer components, so everything could be customized. I think that confused things. Now we're trying to bring the rates back to the standards, closer to what is more standard.
So 10 gigs would allow service to approximately how many customers?
Thousands.
This is where the commissioner's
Yeah. We
information
get off-
and understanding on this is.
We head to a siding.
nebulous.
Yeah, we get off the tracks and onto a siding. So.
Yeah,
Hard to answer.
10 gig could do thousands of customers. It's all how you manage it. But this product is not designed to do individual homes and businesses. This is an enterprise product. If someone wants to buy the product and then use the product to do different things, they're not precluded from doing that, but that's not what the product is designed to do. The product is designed to get you from one point in the network to the other point. With the PON rates, you're only allowed as a wholesaler to resell that one time to the end user. You can't resell that same product 5 times over. In this situation, all you're doing is asking for your data to get from one point in the network to the other point in the network. How you split out that data on one end or the other end, that's not for us to meddle with.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, and this is probably a question for legal counsel. I mean, I know we're trying to be transparent, we're trying to be fair and consistent. Do these rates, are they set in stone, or could we, depending on the end user here or whoever's purchasing the product, work separate deals? I mean, again, I don't know what our restrictions are. Is this the best model to have it one size cookie cutter fit all? Or does it make sense to have one that can be negotiated? I guess maybe this is not the right question for this particular product. I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
I think Kevin has an answer.
Kevin?
Well, I have more of a comment. I'll let Joel answer the legal question.
Everybody's
You
got-
know, the rates should be just like our electric rates, you know, that they should be like situated customers ought to be charged similarly. However, there is an opportunity for commercial accounts to have certain contracts on an individual case basis, like, you know, Will mentioned possibly entering into an interlocal agreement with NOAANET regarding certain services that they provide on a special contract. But, you know, those one-off rates should be, you know, for special circumstances, not for a standard residential rate or standard commercial rate. I mean, those can all be handled in a standard way and ought to be fair and standard across the board.
So I have a question back to NOAANET again. And so we have some sort of agreement with NOAANET about services we're providing and some revenue sharing that expires at the end of this year. And we're anticipating that NOAANET may provide some of those services to their customers using the transport model. Is that what I'm hearing?
Those are, the remaining connections are all transport connections.
They're all transport, okay.
Yeah.
Has NOAANET been a part of this conversation about these proposed rate changes?
They have not, no.
Okay,
So their only agreement with us is that we priced in our rates from 2024, a line item that says legacy, JPUD legacy network rates. And the description is charged the same till the end of 2024.
which
In
is
my
fast
discussion,
approaching.
yeah. In my discussions with NOAANET staff at the time, as I said, they did not want to be a qualified ISP in our network per our policies. If you're going to be operating on our network, you need to be a qualified ISP. They indicated they did not anticipate continuing to operate some of those transport connections. We're at this point, we're not asking for approval till February. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't get it in February if it took a little longer. So we would just extend the current agreement until the new rates were in place.
So that's the plan.
That's staff's plan, but Kevin, you
No,
may have a stronger
no.
opinion. Okay.
Yeah. NOAANET specific, Jeff. I've talked to Craig Nelson and we will come up with, as Will said and Joel are working on, an interlocal where it's not only our side of the equation, it'll be their side of the equation. I'm not sure how everything will end up, Jeff, but it will be an interlocal with NOAANET to move forward. And they were advised of these rates, and they're looking at their network to see, you know, what connections, if any, they're going to carry on. So at least on the NOAANET side, that's going to be handled through a different process.
Okay, so then is the thought that we would discuss with them continuing the current agreement until we have some new interlocal or some new rate in effect? Is that the idea? And has that been communicated? to
I'm not sure we'll have to go to the new year. Jeff, we may be able to come to an agreement fairly quickly, depending on what they want to do and how we want to proceed. But they have some services we want, and I'm optimistic that with my last conversation with Craig, we can work through that fairly quickly. It may go into the new year, but I'm not expecting a problem.
Okay, well, I just hope that we don't leave them behind in these conversations.
Nope. They were brought on board after Will, Joel, and I met. That afternoon, I called Craig.
Okay, And so Leo, please keep it to clarifying questions if.
And no, I do want to point out the PUD is not the only transport game in town. Other entities sell transport. So I'm pointing that out. So as we go through this, and Will, I need you to speed it up a little bit, but we can't set our prices, so we're the only game in town. For example, certain locations can be fed right now from other entities, Lumen, the old CenturyLink, Wave or Astound. So I don't want anyone in the audience or in our boardroom to think that if we raise the rates, automatically their rates would go up. It doesn't work that way. This is broadband is open access, not only on our network, but you can get transport across Astound. We do. You can get transport from NOAANET. We do. Those are all products sold by multiple people. So as we look at these, I don't want people to get the impression that if we raise our rates, the world will come to an end. If we raise them too high, the market will go to the other vendors and we will lose out on some sales. But I don't believe that's the case here. So I'd like to point that out.
Would it be accurate to say, though, that to some extent that is geographically specific, that not everywhere where the PUD can provide transport services would there likely be another vendor to choose from?
Well, I'm going to say it really depends on where you take service at. For example, on Marrowstone Island, we would not be the only vendor. So if that becomes the issue, Marrowstone Island is covered by two entities, not only the PUD, but another entity. So can some of the more remote areas where we're just building right now for the grant area in Gardner and Discovery Bay, even there, it depends on where the equipment is that people want to tie to. So a lot of locations, you're correct. We can't connect, or we are the only connection. But many of the connections that we're talking about today are not those.
So I want to do a time check here. We started at 4. Are we a 6 o'clock hard stop or can we go past 6? Commissioners, you're good. How about you, Ken?
Hard stop for me.
You're at a hard stop. Okay. So Will, how much time do you need to get through your slides?
I'm going to try to get through them in the next 10 minutes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask, please hold questions. We'll have a public comment period after that.
Well,
And Will, you need to cancel a couple slides to get through in 10 minutes.
Oh yeah, because I added more, so we'll have to double cancel.
and again,
Okay. Yeah, just go.
I'm happy to stay for a while after 6.
I don't expect us taking action. We're taping this
Right.
is recorded. Commissioner Collins could always catch the last part on the recording if he wanted any information that was relevant.
Well, and with no action taken, we can stop at any time and bring it back because we aren't expecting a vote on this till February.
We've got people here. We've got people on.
Commissioner Tupper and I are prepared to stay for a while after 6. So let's please continue. Please pick it up, I guess.
So thank you, Kevin, for it. That was very helpful. I would also say that there's many places in Jefferson County where we don't get to where other providers do. So it's a different market.
But is it one last point? Is it fair to say that the actions we take here could impact other people or other ISPs because they're the only game in town? I mean, is that a fair statement? Does that make sense? I mean, the actions.
I don't know if that's a fair statement.
That's all I want to know. If there's someone that could make that case that we're impacting other people who aren't necessarily going to be our customers in the near future or maybe ever, that this impacts them negatively because of the trend.
In the conversation that I've looked at, I don't believe that's the case.
Okay, so to go quickly, we're trying to explain the model, that the above model is the way that we had done it before. The model below is what we're looking to move towards. So instead of the component pricing, we're charging per connection. Instead of a flat rate for the components, we're charging a tiered rate, depending on the bandwidth needed. And it starts at $100 a month for 100 megs, and it goes up to $2,200 for 10 gigs. Or 10,000 megabits per second. Okay.
So, and on that, if someone were to utilize the 10 gig and pay that, they could conceivably have 1,000 customers to spread that cost over. And is that how
They
that
could have
works?
5,000 customers. They could have 15,000
Right, so I'm just
customers if they wanted to
Trying
divide
to
up the
ascertain
bandwidth.
what the impact would be. It does depend on the number of customers as the endpoints as to, what that cost would be to pass along. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
You are, but that's only for one use case. And honestly, that can't be our concern. Our concern is what is the fair market rate, or what is the fair charge to get data from one end to the other? That's what this product is for.
So I'm gonna ask commissioners, see if we can hold our questions to let Will go and let folks weigh in, and then we can talk more.
Okay, so this is just to get across. There's another, oh, sorry, I got to figure out which button to push. There's another methodology, another architecture, which is point to multi-point, where you go from one facility and then you spread out the signal to multiple facilities. In the past, we would charge the scenario that's there. So you could take 3 different locations, combine the signals in the port and then in the core port, and then bring them back to one facility. In the new scenario, you can still do that. It's just you would be charged differently on each leg based on how much bandwidth you needed.
Okay.
So next slide. So this kind of adds up. So in the point to multi-point in the first slide, it would give you $800 a month for those 4 endpoints, 1 core port, 10, and that's the full 10 gig. It's a flat rate. Now, if you had PON connections at each one, because that seems to be a question that keeps coming up, and you had 30 of each and set at 150 megs, so that would be about, at our current rate, that would be $1,410 for each end of those connections to split it up. So you'd be paying, if it was all PON connections, per the wholesale charge is about $4,380 to connect all those customers by PON. So it's a great savings to do it by transport. Now, below that is if we added up all those transport pieces by each bandwidth charge. So you can have all one bandwidth across the network, or you can mix and match depending on what you need for each segment. Unlike a PON connection is shared. So those connections expand or contract based on how much is there. With the transport, it's a dedicated connection. And that's why you can serve so many more customers over that, because you set the full bandwidth for the amount, and that bandwidth is fixed across the network. Okay. Wrong button again. So it shows here, basically, there's the fiber pipeline for the flat rate transport. You get the whole pipeline. We can't sell more than one. If we sell that full pipeline, that one is full. But if we have a pipeline where we have tiered rates, we can put multiple transport charges over that same pipeline and make more revenue.
I'm just going to ask people, do you have a clarifying question?
It's not correct.
Well, save it for your comments, please. You can refer us back to the slide and you can make your statement then. Please continue.
Okay. So transport rates by comparison to other PUDs. When we set these prices that we proposed last meeting, we tried to be lower than the middle, but kind of reasonable. Because the 10 gig rate, you're taking up the full bandwidth, we wanted to have that be a bit more expensive and be a little more accessible on those lower bandwidth rates. Okay, same as last time. What I did pull together is our previous rates. So our previous rates for transport that we had passed in 2016 and 2018 and 2021, these were the schemes. The big differentiations in those times were how many years of a contract the customer had to take that. We're not doing contracts right now because we've been experimenting with the network. We've been experimenting with products, and we've not wanted to have customers lock in case so it gives us the flexibility to try things out. But those were the historical rates, and they were tiered. Now, what happened is prior to 2021, everything was based on a 1 gig bandwidth network. We did our business plan originally based on that 1 gig bandwidth network. That was the standard. Between 2021 and 2022, when we started ordering equipment, 10 gig PON became the standard, or became available and widely available. So we upped it to a 10 gig network. And that was why we came back in 2023 and did another price change. Okay, so the question is, and has been, what happened after 2021? Why did we propose such a big change? The technology improved. We built 10 gig instead of 1 gig. We wanted to allow enterprise and ISP customers more options. That's why we came up with the component pricing, mix and matching products. We wanted more affordable pricing for anchor institutions, but we didn't really factor in point to multipoint, and we didn't factor in the lack of demand for internet across those. So all of the connections that I saw that I showed you for those transports, that's just for the customer to get their own data from here to there. They would have to pay us extra to get back out to the internet. That's what you're talking about, Dan. So that adds quite the charge. Let's see if I have that on the next slide. No, I don't have it. But I can say that for a gig, it's going to add another $500. And for a 10 gig connection, if you're purchasing internet, it's another $5,000.
That's to get out of our network?
To get out of our network to go back out to the internet. Yep. Alternate transport pricing options. There's lots of.
Hang in there. Please wrap up, Will.
Yeah. So we can do this lots of different ways. There's lots of ways we can set this up. We can, depending on the values that the commissioners have. Staff wants to move to a transport based on transport product based on tiered bandwidths. There's a million different ways to do it. You saw in those rates, we can do it different ways. And we can also do it phased in, the way we do our electric and water rates. If we want to do phased increases and examine them from 1 year to next, we can do it in 2 years. We can do it in 3 years. We can do it in 3 years and offer a 3-year contract. Staff has not been a fan of contracts, but these are options that we can provide to make the changes more accessible for our customers. Staff believes that the customers, can pick whatever bandwidth they need based on what their usage is. The entire network right now is less than 1 gig. That's all customers, including all PUD usage.
That's how much action is moving across
is
our.
less than 1 gig.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah. So
Is that
that's it. Transport rate. That's the end of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, commissioners, I would like to propose, I know Leo is uniquely impacted because he's the one person, the one entity who's most affected by this. What I'd like to propose is just give him 5 minutes to talk. If you would like to refer to a slide, please just ask for that slide. And if that's okay, I'd say go.
Okay,
And we'll
PON
start with
rates.
that.
Okay.
So
So now you're talking about offering a 10 gig PON product. You violate your own broadband policy.
and I would ask you to try and make comments and not engage in debate.
Right.
Okay.
I'm saying you're violating your own broadband policy because XGPON only supports 10 gig. So in order to maintain your policy, you would have to only serve one customer on that XGPON port instead of 32. So you're doing a 1x32 split, you violated your policy. Because if you got 10 other people pulling a gig, you cannot maintain the 10 gig to that particular one customer. Okay?
Go ahead.
You don't have more than 10 gig capacity. Okay, so transport. So from say us to Four Corners, right? Yeah, we can get 10 gig to there. From there into Port Townsend, it is a shared service. We're all writing, multiple providers, including yourself and your customers, are writing from four corners on Auto Street on one fiber. And I'm from Auto Street to into Port Townsend on one fiber. So it is actually a shared, it is not dedicated because the use of others depends on what my capacity is. Okay, because I don't have my own fiber. So, and then I was gonna add, so as far as the charges, so like I've said before, the cost is based on distance, speed, and location, as well as what the use case is for the circuit. So a circuit like we use is called a network-to-network interface. It's used to connect two networks together so that we can service multiple people, like on Marrowstone Island. What do we pay for that, or what did we pay before the PUD had to switch to the PUD? We paid $100 a month for that connection.
And that was
The Marrowstone
through,
Island.
sorry, that was through who? Or can you?
NoaNet.
Okay.
That was through NoaNet. Just like we have other connections, we pay $100 a month for those connections.
And that's serving how many people on Marrowstone?
It is serving, I think, about 140 people or so, something like that, through that fiber.
I stopped your time for that question.
Go ahead.
Let's continue.
So, okay, so, and then also when you look at like the comparison rates, you have to realize that those are a starting point. Those aren't a fixed rate, right? That's a negotiable rate from the other service providers. And those are, you're looking at long haul rates. So that's rates that say going from here to Chicago, right? Because you have to pay other people in that path because you don't own the whole fiber all the way to Chicago. You got to pay everybody along the way. In this county, there is nobody else for you to pay. You don't have to pay anybody else. To get from me in Port Hadlock into Port Townsend, you're not paying NoaNet. You're not paying CenturyLink. You're not paying anybody else, right? So, and then the connection that we have for our internet service that we connect to you guys so that we can service our customers, like on the PON network or whatever. Okay, we are paying $350 a month for it because we got the core port charge and we got $150 to get it to. Other PUDs charge us nothing for the interconnection at all. So my 10 gig interconnection, my network to network with Kitsap PUD cost me $0. They make it up on the end side of what it cost, you know, what the charge is that we pay them to get the service to the customer's home or business.
We don't charge Leo an extra cost for that.
Okay, let's try not to debate at this point. But
So anyway, so I mean, yeah, it's this. So my point is, you don't have these exorbitant costs to get traffic from my office to Marrowstone Island or into Seventh Haven Apartments or West Harbor Apartments. You don't have these exorbitant expenses. You literally have no expenses. It was paid for by the BTOP grant. It was, I mean, and then we paid for the initial hookup for the non-recurring costs. You know, and as far as failure, the interface that we use is literally a stick this big that costs about $20. That plugs into the equipment.
you did perfect. That's like 5 minutes. Awesome. So other folks, please, if you don't mind identifying yourself, we all know Leo, so you may come up wherever is most comfortable. Stand, sit. This little device will pick you up.
I gotta sit.
Yeah. And if you could limit yourself to 3 minutes,
Yes,
please.
sir.
Okay.
Mike
thanks.
Schultz, Marrowstone Island, District 2.
Thanks, Mike.
I'm a no talk subscriber. Started out as Marrowstone Wireless. We paid $750 to get from the street to our house. Everybody on the street did. I drove down the street today, like 90% of the people on Griffith Point are his members. And to me, it looks like, pardon me, they're trying to raise our rates so they'll drive us to your business. And to me, that's, wrong, because now we'll have to pay $750 to join your service. But also, it looks like if you're trying to drive him out of business, then it's a takings under the Constitution where you'll be sued for driving him out of business and making us pay $750 each to join your network. One of your slides, where it showed how you divided up the 10 gigs.
The pipe slide.
It basically said you want to maximize your revenue opportunities. And to me, that is the PUD in business to drive up the rates for everybody, or is it to provide service? On your internet, it says that serve the underserved, didn't say maximize profits for the PUD. Let me check. Basically, so it's VLAN and the transport fees that I had to speak of. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Anybody else in the room like to speak? Do we have anybody online who would like to speak? And if you would, please raise your hand if you can do that. I'm just gonna stand by to see, and I don't have my thing in front of me. It's like it was.
There's no hands raised. this
Don't
time.
have
I'll
any
let-
hands.
Well, while you're waiting, on the last gentleman's statements there, I don't know if we're conflating grant areas versus already served areas. The $750, what was that? I know in our grant areas for people who don't qualify for the first 60%, we charge $750 for what the first 1,000 feet. If you're in that, that's what you pay to connect to PUD. I'm not sure where he was going with our business model as it applies to that particular already served area. Can somebody help me out with?
Yeah,
separating those things
so we're
apart?
not, so first of all, we're not trying to drive anyone out of business. We're trying to connect underserved areas and expand fiber access out around the county. We've got about $60 million from the federal government to do so. This product, we're trying to get closer to a market rate so that we have fair pricing for all customers that might use it. And there's a lot of different ways that that product can be used. You can buy a 10 gig connection. You could buy a 1 gig connection. You could buy a 3 gig connection. So there's multiple prices that will be available. Our intention is to charge something fair and transparent. But we are also building a new network and do have to recover costs where we can.
Leo, I want to ask you a question. How much actual cost increase would you be looking at? What's the delta here?
The total dollar amount,
Yeah.
about $17,000 a month. So you gotta remember that that's $2,200 to get service to the Seventh Haven Apartments, which is low income. Ole Cap is gracious enough to pay us $430 a month.
For Marrowstone Island, the 140 customers.
Right.
Because those are the folks I've heard from.
Right, okay.
What are you looking at as the actual cost increase to you?
Well, I'd have to raise rates across the board to everybody to cover that $17,000. So
I don't think Marrowstone Island would be $17,000.
So I think we're gonna have some differences of opinion here. I think commissioners are in the information gathering phase.
Which this is for staff, something that we need to figure out. The
Yeah.
delta commissioner asked
Right.
about what the delta might be. We know
Right.
how many customers and we know.
It's
how this
not,
would
yeah,
impact.
it's not charged per customer. So we only charge per connection and we have that price right here. So if a customer wanted to connect 4 endpoints together, that's 88 at 10 gigs, that's $8,800 a month.
Okay, it's,
But that customer has multiple options and different ways to do it based on bandwidth needs. As stated, the entire network uses less than 1 gig.
Okay.
I wonder if we can recognize Mr. Tibble.
That's where I was gonna go. Tim Tibbles, you're up. 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. So I just have a question and clarification. You know, we've got our pawn business rates compared to our transport rates, where I could purchase 10 gigabit there for a quarter of the same price, and you have to support it. Whereas in these transport rates, you're not supporting it at all from the standpoint of once you set it up. So it seems a little high to me, and I recognize that other utilities charge the same rate that you are. But believe me, through my career, my business and I were always fighting that, well, this is the way we always did it attitude. And, you know, I want you to make money. I'm not as interested in you going out of business. But there is that obvious difference that personally, I don't understand. I've got a network background, and I don't understand why there is that such significant a difference between what you're charging for a business person on your PON network that you have to support compared to a transport connection of the same bandwidth.
Thanks, Tim.
That's another question for staff to.
Yeah.
back
So
with.
with that PON port for a shared PON port, we would connect more than one customer on that 10 gig port. So the PON ports are understood that not all the customers are going to be using all the data at the same time. The way cable companies do it is they have, you know, we're looking at a 1/32 split. They're sharing it between hundreds and more per connection. So we're gonna be giving a really high service, but that's what the PON network is. It is a shared network. When we set up the transport network, that's putting in, you know, the equivalent of a straw through the network that does not change in size and is dedicated as priority to allocate that much space to the end across the network versus the PON network, which is more flexible.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is people who haven't spoken yet have a chance to speak, and then I'd like to have the commissioners have a chance just to talk a little bit and maybe give some feedback and direction to staff. Is there anybody who hasn't spoken yet? And if you're on the phone, *9 will do a raised hand. Anybody who hasn't spoken yet, please indicate by raising your hand. Okay. I think this is, we have a lot of education to do to understand things like this. I think this is going to be an ongoing discussion, but I just want to share. So I had a conversation with Angela Bennett today, talked a little bit about this.
The general manager at Kitsap.
General manager at Kitsap PUD, used to work for NOAANET, very bright on all this stuff. And one of the things she told me was they've adjusted their 10 gig rates for their cell towers, because they realize the cell towers are providing service to Kitsap PUD customers and they want to have it more affordable. And she said they're charging somewhere around $600 a month.
So did
for
she
that
say,
10
is that
gigs.
cost for them? Is there a certain amount of margin?
Well, it's the
on
same
that?
thing. It's transport.
Okay.
It's this. And in talking about why should it not just be free? Because eventually we're going to have to replace this stuff. And we need to, you know, there's a depreciation on it, and we need to be, and this is something Angela brought up, you know, we need to be collecting money so that we can maintain and fix things and pay for staff to do it. So it can't be free, even if somebody else paid for us to get it put in the first place. So I guess my thought on it is I'm feeling kind of the same way. I'm, you know, even though there are other utilities out there charging $2,000, I'm feeling like this is a pretty gigantic jump in price. And I realize too that customers like Leo would have the choice if we implemented this different model of different speeds, and maybe 10 gig wouldn't absolutely be necessary and he could choose a lower speed. But I'm feeling like more like $600, because I think wasn't it Chelan is like 700.
Yeah, but now you're starting to talk about a utility that has dams and generates, and their power cost is like 4
So I'm
cents.
just
Yeah,
I'm just
so-
sharing I'm just throwing it out there as kind of a starting point of going, if we go to this, I'm thinking more along those lines, and that's just where I'm thinking right now. And I may change my mind based on more information.
Well, I think we're at a point where there's still a lot of questions that the public is going to have, you know, with this second touch on this. I think if they directed their questions copy the commissioners, but really, we don't have the expertise and the day-to-day knowledge of this. They need to direct the questions to staff and the general manager, or maybe just the general manager, and he can delegate it how he wants. But what the real questions are about some of these key issues, and then they can report to the commissioners on what the real issues and points of contention really are. Because we can do this circular thing all day long of, you know, of one person's opinion versus another, but it really has to be condensed down to facts and how that applies to our business model, our cost recovery, so that we don't have stranded costs and we can make our operation and maintenance responsibilities for however big our broadband division is going to be.
And what I'd like to do is exactly what you're doing. Each of us kind of say where we're at on this issue. And I guess for me to finish up, I would also say, I think the commissioners need to get more information on kind of the high level of, here is our business plan. We're hoping to have X% of our customers on the PON. We expect to have this network transport, you know, a certain number of transport folks. If there's costs that we have of getting off the peninsula, how we're handling that. I think we all need to, as much as you can get us to understand this business and this infrastructure, like I think we have a pretty good understanding of the electrical system. You know, I think we generally understand how that works pretty well. So I feel like staff needs to help us get there so we can make as intelligent decisions as we can. And I'm just kind of, as we're talking about these things, I'm concerned about, you know, NOAANET and how our relations with them and these rates are going to impact them. I'm interested in if there's any other rates that we're talking about that are a concern to the public, or if it's really just the transport rates that are a concern out of what we're talking about. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And do you want to go?
Yes.
In multiple
So,
ways.
true. Just looking at the figures, the amount of the increase seems to be startling. And it certainly is not my intention. You know, I think it's in the real world, we compete, but it certainly isn't my intention for us to have a slanted playing field and to make it impossible for people to stay in business without raising rates on customers that would have a major impact. That being said, I would really like to know, send me an email, copy the other commissioners and show me why you would be looking at paying $17,000 in order to continue to serve your customers. Give me the data. But without a depth understanding, my gut reaction is we need to raise the rates in a fair manner. We need to do it in a progressive manner, and not to have an increase that is 500%. And that's not fair to anybody. And this is one situation where, you know, typically I don't hear a lot from my neighbors on Marrowstone. This time I did. And, you know, I need to be sensitive to the fact that people don't want their rates doubled as an end result.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything Commissioner Collins said. And, you know, I think that for you, I don't know that I want the 30,000 foot, because that gets us into maybe too much minutia. I'd rather have it condensed down to the real salient points that apply to what we're doing with these rates as it compares to, and this is where I'm going, to our business model. It's been stated we're doing something different. So I don't know what's fair, what's not fair at this point because of the business model we've chosen. And so I think maybe at some point we need to maybe review, if we're going to stay on this path of retail service, what is our market share? What is our possibilities for revenues? And what does that mean for how big of a broadband department we can support for operation and maintenance of retail service? I think that's the big question for me. Can we stay on the retail path? is it gonna hurt more people than it helps at the end of the day, rather than us just being a wholesale provider and using grant money to build out a network? I mean, I still think that could be a bit of an unanswered question at this point, hearing all the different things that are going on around how our rates need to be set. I don't have, I can't pick a number, 600 or 800. I don't understand this well enough to know what our business model needs in the confinement of what we have to follow by the state legislation and other rules of doing this particular type of business. Because to me, it's still not clear to me.
And I guess one additional thing I'd like to say is, I think the overall goal of this whole thing was to get a heck of a lot better internet service to the residents of Jefferson County.
And it's a good goal.
Yeah, that's why we're doing this stuff. And we have two sets of customers, one in an apartment building and one out on Marrowstone Island, that until this, we're pretty dang happy. And I just look at, we have a lot of stuff to do. So I realize we have a contract ending with NoaNet. I realize that we may need to come up with some new categories so we're not, basically giving away 10 gig service, as you and Doug Dawson have shown that our rates are low for these things. And there will be folks who may need a gig or 10 gigs or 3 gigs or whatever. I guess I'm, Leo, we're kind of in some ways asking you to show your cards. How much service do you need? And that, I'm not going to ask you that now, but
I've already asked.
you've asked him for that. But I guess I would like us to not get hung up with our, I think of like the bicycle and getting your pant leg caught in the chain on this thing, because we've got customers that are otherwise happy. I think we're hearing that you have a need to make some changes.
Yep.
So I guess the question is finding it, that right size so that we don't get our pants hung up in the chain and we keep going.
Yep.
And we make some adjustments. And I think there's some trust building that probably needs to occur here between you guys and you guys about what you're trying to do so you can be successful and you can serve your customers and you can feel like we're not giving away the store and we can have money to pay for fixes and improvements in the future.
Yeah, and set fair rates.
And set fair rates.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the challenge I think we have here.
So I just remembered you asked a question on how much bandwidth, right? Or how many customers will 10 gig support?
Yes.
Mr. Collins. So the generic answer to that is that ISPs generally try and keep a 10-to-1 ratio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I have a 10 gig connection and I have people that have 1 gig service and they're expecting to be able to get 1 gig service at their house, right? You could support 100 customers with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and Will says that, well, we see it's less than less than a gig of traffic that you show passing on your network.
Yeah.
You got to remember that's in a 5-minute average. Okay. So you're not seeing what happened
On the peak.
the whole time. So 3 minutes ago, somebody could have downloaded something that spiked your network to 10 gig, right? You're seeing the 5-minute average.
Okay. So I'm going to ask us to move on. I think we've tried to give as much constructive feedback as we can and raise the questions we can.
Like I said, do we appoint a contact rather than, each of us getting an email asking for direction? Can we have a central point of contact?
Well, and
For these type of questions that are more of an operational, oriented type of.
sure.
question.
And I mean, yeah, the public is encouraged to reach out to Will, but I think that's part of why we're here. We're here as the backstop. And if folks feel like they're not being heard, they're going to come to us. And I think they have to be able to do that if they want to. All right. So there was no action asked for. We're going to move on. Thanks to everybody for your input. And we do need to keep this bicycle on its wheels. So back to the next item is sorry.
So it's a change order for Finley.
Oh man, this one's even
It's
almost as good as the last
Yeah,
one.
I'm a glutton for punishment.
Yeah,
This one,
Yeah.
Just talking about fun
Holy
things on the
cow.
agenda. I wasn't
Okay.
sure which one should-
let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So we've incurred extra engineering charges in the last 6 months, as we've as we built out our network between Quilcene and Gardner, we're asking for an additional $700,000 on our engineering contract with Finley Engineering. We've asked for additional services. We've asked for additional, we've had some redesigns. We've added on some different things to the contract. So we are asking the board, since it was a formally approved contract, we're asking for a formal approval for the $700,000.
All right. So two obvious questions are, this is a 50% increase in the cost of the engineering that Finley provided us. You know, how did that occur? Did it occur because the contractors wanted to install it differently? That's just such a massive change order. And then who's going to pay for it?
The grant agencies are going to pay for it. We've increased and had a budget approval, budget increase approval in the engineering category already approved by the Washington State Broadband Office. They added in an additional $300,000 into our grant award, not to cover this, but to cover other charges. So the grant award has gone up. And this will also be covered in the cost overruns of the match grant grant loan that we got from the Public Works Board.
Okay. I guess in terms of why the cost, if there's any way to summarize that,
Yeah,
or
so,
maybe.
so big ones, we had we tried to kind of let well, how do I put it? So at first we were not going to have every home get a drop design, and we were kind of trying to do it on the fly and just trying to take the shortest path. It was problematic. Finley had requested.
I apologize for having to leave early. I've got a diabetic animal at home that needs an insulin injection at a certain time.
Okay.
And that's not the kind of thing that,
Okay.
you have a lot of flexibility.
Good night, Ken.
Good night. Thanks, Commissioner.
This was a service that Finley requested we use it first. We wanted to kind of wait and see if we can get by without it. After a certain time, we agreed it would do better for us if we took the service. I think that was about $300,000 of the $700,000 increase.
So the funding was we've already received funding to
We've
cover.
already received the, yeah.
Okay.
So
So
as part of the previous form, it was a 4 million we got in addition to the original through
additional 20 million, yeah.
or 20
And
million.
basically our original estimates of how we build the system just turned out not to be practicable in the field. And we had to.
No, they've been practical. Generally, we're still on track for our budget for construction, but there's just been changes here or there that required more coordination. Environmental's been a lot more expensive. There's a lot more monitoring because we're doing a lot more digging. So that's an increased cost. We've also, we're trying to incorporate, they're designing this whole new product. We've got to digest that mapping system into our network. Those costs are in addition to the original contract. So we've added a number of contracts, but we've covered the cost with the grant.
So the complexity of the engineering that goes into building this network is far beyond what most people were probably thinking when we started down this road. Is that fair to say that?
No.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no. I mean, this was always going to be a very
So,
difficult
Where I'm
project.
going is to trying to understand the build out.
Yeah.
And you used the term, the drop, what was it, engineering or?
Drop
design?
design.
So is it each house that big of an issue to critical issue to get the drop into the house? I'm just kind of curious to understand.
So what
the
what the
process.
engineer's recommendation was that will actually save us money and save headaches if the engineer designs the path and goes through and monitors the best way to get around, make sure there's not things that are going to be lines that'll be cut, things, not impediments in the way of the
Trying to
path.
determine, is this a really a necessary type of a cost, or is there an easier, more generic way to just say it's coming into
So
the house?
going,
And then you decide after
and
that?
that's what we tried to do, Dan, and it didn't work. And going forward, we would pay for this cost for the future grant areas.
So it is a cost in future areas that we need to, that we're mindful of now that we need to figure
Yeah.
into the cost of the build out.
No, it was one that we requested not be done. So I think it's built into the cost.
Okay.
So we were looking to save money in lots of different ways.
Cause I'm just looking ahead more than
Yeah.
trying to look back.
No, we will be using that service going forward, though.
And it also sounds like we will know where everything is because it was engineered up front. as opposed to building it and then trying to figure out where to go.
It's already mapped up front, and then any changes can be made when they come in and do the building. But
Okay.
it just helps everything along and
Okay.
it helps with our records.
All right. So do we have any more questions? Dan?
No,
Okay.
it's, the
Uh,
money's already accounted for, so.
So do we have any public comments or questions, Leo?
So, I mean, as far as the as-built are concerned, right, where everything's at, that's a requirement of the contract, right? They gotta provide you with the as-built. You have your own GIS people that can actually put it in the GIS system. You don't have to use them. And the PUD we've constantly heard from them that they're behind, they're not, you know, we're not meeting our goals, we're past our deadlines. My question is, why are you authorized to give them more money when actually they should start being penalized for not meeting the performance requirements?
Okay, fair question.
Lawyer question? I don't know. I don't know the contract stipulations.
Well, I mean, it is true that we have kind of burned the Finley flag a few times in effigy about them holding us back. So
Yeah,
I
and
guess
they've refunded work they've done for changes that were in
Okay.
their error and things like that. So there's been a number of changes on different ends. This has been a difficult project. It will be a difficult project till we complete it next spring. We are in a good place. We have fiber to over 1,000 homes. We had a delay due to the construction contractor and splicing that's delayed our in-home installs. We started this week. There's enough splicers in the area. So there's going to be challenges. There's no point in pretending there won't be, but we're moving forward and we're learning a lot of lessons. And
this is
to
something
cover
that's-
costs that
that
we've
staff
already got.
can't do in-house, and we need Finley to
Cannot
engineer
do
it.
this in-house. no.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Yes.
Mike Schultz, Maristone. I'm retired from a $3 billion construction company. My job was to do change order reviews for that $3 billion company. And a 51% increase needs to be looked at closely. I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but did they have a hard money contract or our contract, or something has to be shown to justify $9,000?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it sounds like it was things that they initially offered and we declined. Is that an accurate?
No, for the
statement?
additional surveys for the drop surveys or drop design, the other things were additional hours than what we originally had billed in the contract.
Okay, so it was a contract based on the amount of time to do the work.
Yeah, so there was an
Yeah.
overall contract to do the design and engineering and construction management for all the grant areas, and then there's task orders for each. So this is to increase the task order for the current project.
Okay. And I don't know if Kevin, are you still on the line? Do you have any comments on this? Because you've had a lot to do with the relationship with Finley and so forth. I mean,
Yeah, I was on several of the calls with Will and Finley. It does seem like a increase that's unacceptable, but after we've worked through the time and the energy, it's a legitimate cost. We need to move forward. This project has been a tough one.
Yeah, and Kevin and I have been negotiating this cost with them for 3-4 months now
Okay.
as well.
all right.
And you've already touched on timeline a little bit, so I do have, they actually have 90 days here. What does this do to the build out schedule for us? How much beyond their 90 days do we expect it'll take us to complete the build out?
We're looking at end of May to finish all the installation. All of the mainline construction should be complete by March 31st, but we may have to extend the timeline, and we may have to extend a slight increase again. So I'm just being honest here.
And the grant stipulations allow us, or how far did?
The grant deadline was moved back to November 2025.
Yeah. I mean, I think the main thing is we got to get this thing done.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to accept this change order. Or
Actually-
to have the manager execute this change order.
Right. So the motion is to approve Approve a motion to authorize the general manager to sign the change order increasing the cost by $709,214 and extend the engineering completion date to March 31st, 2025. So
I'll second.
okay, I'll make the motion. You'll second.
You'll
Okay,
withdraw
Jeff.
my motion and I'll second your.
Jeff made the motion, Dan seconded. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is passed. And then just so Cammie knows, Commissioner Collins did leave the meeting. It was about 6:02 or so. Okay, next item.
That would be me.
Okay, Jean.
I need a motion from you to either approve or deny billing adjustments for 6 customers. You might recall during the distribution of the clean energy credits, we found accounts that were commercial rather than residential incorrectly. I believe in my own business sense that we should make this right for the customer. Kevin disagrees. I'm too nice. So it's a good thing. It's a decision for the board. I've tried to give you all the facts.
Yeah.
And any adjustment greater than a period of 48 months requires action from the board.
Right.
PUD staff, we are working on fixing the bills. I have my staff looking at how we can fit a revenue class in with a rate schedule on the statement so that it is very clear to customers, both their revenue class and their rate.
Right.
So we identified that. We have already fixed our processes for account changes and new services.
Yeah.
To catch those before they happen.
Right. So is the total amount $3,342.23?
That is the total amount for 6 customers. Only 2 have requested in writing the adjustment.
Okay.
But out of fairness to all customers,
Right.
I thought I would bring you everything up front.
Right. Yeah, and from my looking at it, it's like we had them in the wrong customer class. Nobody caught it. I suspect we probably spent more in staff time trying to figure this out and be accurate and fair than this actual money. So I have no problem authorizing this.
Yeah, and I know it's incumbent on home builders to, pay attention, follow the rules and read everything close, and maybe something fell through the holes in this one. For this amount, I realize every dollar matters, but for this one, I think Jean made a good comment to start with, and I have no objections to us. Just go ahead and
Okay.
writing this off the book.
So I'll make the motion to approve the request for $3,342.23 to be granted to these customers to correct the billing.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion?
Bob is online.
Okay.
He's one of the affected customers.
Hey, Bob.
Hi. It's been an entertaining couple of hours. Jean has been great at providing information. So I just actually want to compliment PUD on the communication of this issue, because as one of the affected customers, we actually did apply for our initial service as residential, and Jean confirmed that, and we have a copy of that. It just got put in the wrong category. And so it's only been between $5 and $10 a month, but this has been going on for a long time, unbeknownst to us. But it was PUD who caught it, stepped up to it, and I think you now have, with passing this resolution, demonstrated that PUD is also fair when it comes to it. Let me just say one thing. I was looking at the most recent bills. The most recent bills have the service description as 7-1 PH, 1 phase, residential electric. Well, at least residential is there. The previous bills, when we were being falsely put under the wrong category, that service description was 24-1P, 1 phase general. That doesn't say commercial. So even had we inspected our bills as closely as we can be held to account, I don't think we would have seen it either, because it doesn't say commercial, it doesn't say residential. It just says general. We would have kept going. So that might deserve another look to make the service descriptions even more clear. Just a suggestion, but thank you for stepping up and making this right.
Thanks,
I
Bob.
appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. We got a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Sorry, Kevin. Next one. Sometimes we don't go with your recommendations. Let's see. So we did the rate correction. So we've got this proposed non-rep salary table under new business. Is that going to be Melanie?
This
All
one,
right.
if Kevin doesn't mind. So this salary table, we just have one item on it. It's cleanup. When we had to backfill the network engineer position, we decided to fill that gap with an elevated role, which was titled the fiber engineer.
Mhm.
And we are changing that job title to technology infrastructure manager to be more aligned with industry standards. So this is in the broadband department.
Okay, so this is in red somewhere on here.
Yes, that top, at the top
Page.
page.
Did you have to alter the job description at all for this particular position with this change, or?
We have, so with the fiber engineer job description,
There it
we
is.
added additional duties to that. And so then after that, it was just a matter of a title change.
Just to make sure the two things match up, so.
Melanie, do you want to introduce the technology?
Did we introduce him
Nope,
yet?
he's right
Okay,
there.
I missed the first couple of minutes
Yep.
of the meeting.
Hi,
Hello.
would you like to introduce yourself? Or someone like to introduce him?
Curtis.
Curtis Fryer. I've worked with Kevin Street in the past on other broadband infrastructure, SCADA, electrical type stuff. Technical infrastructure manager, thanks to Melanie on getting that set up. This is day number 2 for me. Working with Will and the team and trying to get through some of the broadband stuff, get my hands on some of the equipment, what's going on, and try to help out with some of the infrastructure pieces. Have lots of information to collect and put together. So thanks for having me. And if you want technical, I can go technical. If you want more.
Dumb it down.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Curtis. Welcome. Okay, so what do we need to do here, Melanie?
The recommendation is to pass this by motion.
Okay. All right, so any further discussion or questions on this one? Not seeing any.
I'll make the motion to accept the new term technology infrastructure manager into our salary titles. Does that suffice?
It's titles and biweekly salary ranges for non-represented employees.
Okay.
All right, I will second that motion. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, the table is amended. And again, welcome, Curtis. All right, we have reached the end of our business. Thanks everybody for staying a little late. Thank you, Dan. And it is now 6:18 and we are adjourned.
You.